Brilliant. I'll get started then. So what does Governors for Schools do? We've been working in England for over 20 years to improve education through effective governance, and we launched our service in Wales in November 2020. We know that having talented and committed volunteers active in board roles can transform a school, and we work with schools to understand what they need, with schools registering their board vacancies with us for free. When schools register their vacancies with us, they say if there are any specific skills or experience that they're looking for. We will then work with our volunteers to find the best match and make introductions. During your time with us, we provide ongoing support so that you can develop your skills in the role and have the knowledge to succeed from the start. We aim to not only find volunteers with the right skills, but to ensure that boards are representative of the wider community and to be successful in engaging a broad range of people. So what is a school governor then? Which is obviously a very important question. The governor role is strategic rather than operational. So governors don't get involved with the day-to-day running of the school. Instead, they work at board level to support and challenge the school's leadership team to drive school improvement. A school governor is passionate about improving opportunities for all young people. And to do this, they volunteer their time, skills, and experience to impact the effectiveness of the school they support. Why might you want to become a school governor? So there are many reasons why you might want to consider becoming a school governor. So one of those reasons may be that you care about education that children receive and you want to drive school improvement. You want to make an important contribution to your local community. It may be that you enjoy a challenging and a rewarding role that helps you develop in your professional life. You're keen to help all children do better at school now and in the future, and you want to bring what you've learned in your professional life onto the board to best support the school. So what are the qualities of a good governor? There are numerous qualities to being a good governor, such as having the time to commit to a role, being a critical friend to the head teacher, being objective, having accountability, providing and applying your specialist knowledge to the role while also being a champion of the school. It's important to highlight that this list, it doesn't name a specific background or discipline, which is why people from all walks of life with all different skill sets can become a school governor. So importantly, why do we need school governors? There's a continual need for volunteers as we have vacancies registered throughout the year, and school governors is actually one of the largest volunteer groups across England and Wales. We have thousands of vacancies registered with us, with some areas more in need than others. Looking at the pie chart, you can see that most vacancies are in the primary space of education, based on most schools being primaries. With this in mind, we do really encourage you to consider being as open as possible when thinking about the type of school you'd like to support. So moving on now then to governor responsibilities, and I'll just tap into the 3 core responsibilities of being a school governor, and I'll try to go into a little bit more detail on each of those responsibilities in the next few slides. So school governors enable their school to run effectively and provide excellent education for children. They have 3 core responsibilities: planning the strategic direction of the school so that there is a clear vision in line with the school's ethos, overseeing the financial management of the school and ensuring its money is well spent and appropriately accounted for, and thirdly, holding senior leaders to account for the educational performance of the school and the outcomes of its pupils. So just to go into some further detail on the strategic responsibility of being a school governor. As a school governor, you play a key role in setting the vision for the school and helping the head to think about how that builds into all areas. Is the vision ambitious for every child? And what is in place to make it happen? If the school has a clear vision, it can help the blueprint for every child's success. Think about how children, staff and families are engaged and consulted. Make sure it's clear and embedded. You will also be involved in areas such as policy development and agreeing the school development plan. All of these areas require a range of skills, and your expertise makes a real difference. For example, as an educationalist can help to ask questions and build a strong approach around areas like curriculum. Someone with financial expertise helps the school to budget effectively and deliver a sustainable future for the school. Someone with marketing expertise might help to consider if the school is being presented in the best light and how students can be proud of the school that they attend. Someone with community knowledge, on the other hand, may help with the consideration of local issues. Moving on now to the financial aspect of the role. So it's important to note that governors don't set the budget, but they must oversee it and ensure that it's spent in line with the strategic vision for the school. The level of responsibility may differ between boards, but something common to consider is the breadth of competing needs for the budget. Building a sustainable future for the school is vital to supporting educational achievement. So you don't have to be an expert in finance, but that's the point of having mixed skills across the board. In some cases, you'll learn as you'll go, and you'll be able to contribute some skills, and you'll also be able to gain others. So thirdly, as a governor, part of your role is to monitor and evaluate, and to be effective, that you need to be able to ask questions and be aware of all of the information available. Being able to support and challenge the head is one of the most key aspects of being a governor. A good example of how you will do this is examining the progress and attainment data. So you'll examine how different groups within the school are progressing, what's in place to support children with SEN, for example, or children with English as an additional language. By discussing with the board, you can really understand what the data means and how it affects each child in that school. Another way of looking at responsibility of accountability is to break it down into watchdog, mediator, and champion. As a watchdog, you're there to make sure the right questions are asked, seek evidence to back up statements being made, and don't accept what's being reported or planned on face value, but make sure there is robust reasoning behind it. As a mediator, you'll be judging the needs of the students, the staff, and the parents, as well as more practical things like balancing the budget. You'll be sat on a board with people from a variety of backgrounds, and you really need to bring people and their opinions together to ensure the board is effective. Lastly, it's vital to be a champion. So you need to be able to celebrate the successes of the school and make sure that progress is recognised. As a volunteer, being passionate about the school is what makes the role so satisfying. So moving on now to different roles on the governing board. As you can see from the slide, there are a variety of roles that make up a school governing board. These will always include the head teacher, as this is a part of their role. They will usually have a clerk who offers administrative support and advice, and boards will usually have between 7 and 12 governors, with 2 taking the role of chair and vice chair. Some boards may have more. As you can see, so there is co-opted governors or community governors, local authority governors, and foundation governors. We most commonly recruit co-opted community or local authority governors. Foundation governors must be practicing in the same religion as the school and be signed off by their faith leader. There is also usually a parent governor on a governing board, and parent governors should have a child at school. If the school is unable to recruit a parent governor for whatever reason, a proxy parent governor who has a child of school age but doesn't necessarily attend that school may be able to join the board. Boards may adopt different structures with different levels of responsibility, such as committees and link roles, but this can be discussed when matching you with a school. Essentially, each of these names for governors just describe the different ways of being appointed as a governor. Whether you're voted in by the board, supported by the local authority, or signed off by the diocese, the role is still fundamentally the same, as it involves that strategic, financial, and accountable focus that I've already described in the previous slide. So that moves me nicely on now to what is the key differences between a school governor role and a trustee role. In governance structure terms, trustees sit at board level and are responsible for all of the schools in an academy trust, as compared to governors who are responsible for individual schools. There can be anything from 1 to 40 plus schools within academy trusts, and the budget will vary accordingly. Funding for academies is delivered directly from the government rather than through the local authority, meaning that the trust need to ensure transparency around its management and effective use. This is where external skills from the business sector are especially useful, as education leaders may not have been required to manage multi-million-pound budgets before. It's also really important to note that the trustee role is a dual role. So as well as being a trustee of the trust, individuals also operate as a director of a company, meaning that they're listed on Companies House and subject to company law. Beyond this important distinction, however, the trustee role is in many ways similar to the governor role, in that it is a strategic, eyes-on, hands-off role, involving being a critical friend, challenging the executive of the trust, as opposed to the head teacher of an individual school, and holding the executive to account for its decision-making. So like the governor matching process at Governors for Schools, we also strive to meet your preferences when matching with a trust, and we have a dedicated trustee recruitment service for this. So I just wanted to touch on remote governance and remote roles that we have here at Governors for Schools. We believe a blended governance approach consisting of both local and remote governors will increase the diversity and inclusivity of governing boards. So what is a remote governor and why do we need it? Remote governance is a model of school governance that allows for at least a minority of board members to attend meetings remotely. Many boards are looking for a particular skill set, and in some areas, volunteers with this skill, they might be hard to come by. So remote governance is a way for a board to add this skill from experienced volunteers elsewhere in the country. The role of a remote governor would be the same as of a local governor. In fact, the only difference would be that the governor has a virtual presence rather than a physical one. And if you are interested in finding out more on remote governance, then please do speak to your dedicated partnership team member when you apply, and we'll be able to give further details on that. So moving on to commitment now then, and I'm sure many of you have questions regarding commitment of the role. In regards to how much time per month the role might take, based on feedback from our volunteers, the school governor role takes on average 7 hours per month. But this really can vary depending on the school or depending on whether you take on additional roles such as chair, but most boards will meet once per half term or so. You'll also need to factor in time to prepare for meetings, visit the school and report back on your findings, as well as getting involved in school celebration events too. The term of office is usually 4 years, so it is best to consider the role as long-term. It can take a while to get to know the school and start to see the impact that you're having. But of course, it is a volunteer role and your circumstances can change. So it might be that you may have to resign before the 4-year term is up, and that's absolutely fine. You just have to be transparent with the school, but you may equally put yourself forward for a second or even a third term. Some schools do also consider associate governors who may be involved in a specific project for a more limited time. In regards to travel, when you apply, you can tell us how far would be practical to travel to a school. The larger area that we can search for vacancies, the quicker we're likely to be able to find you a vacancy. For example, if you wanted a secondary school opportunity within 10 minutes from your home address, you might be waiting slightly longer than if you was willing to be open to any phase of education within a travel time of 30 minutes from your address, for example. But we're happy to accommodate. So finally, just to touch on liability then, when you join the governing board, you're seen as a collective entity that supports the school. So any decisions or strategic oversight that you provide is seen as collective. There is a shared liability. So what that means is that if the board was found to not be supporting the school in a sufficient manner, or almost let the school down in some way, it is likely the whole board will be dismissed, as they will be found jointly liable for the failure. There can be misconceptions around personal liability, but the only way a governor could be found personally liable is if they were found to have acted criminally, for example, negligently or fraudulently. So our advice and guidance is, as long as you do act genuinely with honest intentions or motives with the best interest of the school, then there's nothing to worry about regarding liability. Where there are any financial losses or debt by the school from poor financial oversight, then they will have insurance policies to cover that money. So as a governor, you're not personally liable for the debts of the school. Okay, so moving on now to how will you benefit? What will you get out of being a school governor? So firstly, you'll be able to develop transferable skills from the wealth of opportunities that being a school governor can offer, benefiting you both professionally and personally. So you have the opportunity to develop experience across a range of skills that you may not otherwise be exposed to in your normal professional role. So our professional development research found that by undertaking a governor role, confidence increased, performance was enhanced in the workplace, and there was reported growth in preparation, flexibility and agility, analysing performance data and KPIs, financial skills, and value for money. You'll have the opportunity to gain board experience, so making board level decisions, as well as having the opportunity to network and collaborate with others in your community, which can broaden your worldview. And each person in this virtual room has a unique skill set to offer a school governing board, whether that's skills in finance, HR, fundraising, education policy, mental health, safeguarding, marketing, and so many other skills, which I'm sure are in this room. Schools are desperately in need of that from committed volunteers. So wherever your skills lie, there will be a school that needs what you have to offer. And lastly, but not least, you can give back to your community. So during your term, you will have an impact on the education of hundreds, if not thousands of children, and those children can have a better experience of learning, higher aspirations, and improved life chances because of your impact as being part of a board. Right, so I'm going to hand over now to Sito, and he will be speaking about his governance journey.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me, Claire? I just checked I'm all coming across all okay.
Yes, I can.
Brilliant. Well, look, first thing I would say is please, please, please do ask questions because it makes it much enjoyable for me to answer the questions and Claire to answer the questions. But equally, I have no doubt that if you've got a question rumbling around in your head and you ask it, you're going to help probably the vast majority of the other 50 plus people that are on the call. So it's a double win, and we'll try and make sure we get through all the questions. So I guess let me start off by talking about my journey. I'll then talk to you about various things that I've done since, how it's added value, what scared me about it before I got into it, what some of the words that we've heard today mean, because again, it reminded me of when I first became a governor and the bits that scared me. So hopefully I can bring some of this to life to you. So why did I begin? For really selfish reasons. So both my daughters were at the school. They had an election for what we call the local stakeholder group, which was one of the governance roles. And I thought, do you know what, selfishly, if I can make sure they get a better education, even better. So I applied and went through a process, which was really good. I was then appointed. And then I got the first set of papers through to read. And again, right, I was looking at these papers and I was thinking, oh my God, what have I let myself into? Because from being in a non-education background, by the way, if I'm scaring you, don't worry, it does get better. But coming from a non-education background, I'm reading the papers, I'm thinking about the committees, and it's the first time I'm exposed to this. And I had a really good induction, but I was thinking, well, I don't know what some of this means. But of course I don't know what some of this means because I don't come from an education background. So I started to ask questions. And what turned out was what I thought my questions were just to improve my education about education was actually doing that thing that Claire's been talking along all right, is challenging and holding the teachers and the senior leadership to account, but being that critical friend. So I wasn't having a go, I was just asking what's happening. What was really good is I could see good, robust answers and confident answers. But equally, when I wasn't getting confident answers, it either meant I wasn't understanding something or actually maybe they weren't as confident in that area. And we were able to sort of unravel that a bit further. But what it meant was that actually it helped the school, it helped all the constituent parts of the various bits that were involved, meaning that, if we were querying why one year group had better results than another one and I wasn't getting the right answer, somebody else was chipping in and we were working together, and then we were coming up with solutions that said, well, okay, actually you might be right, and at the next meeting, why don't we focus on this area? And before I knew it, that's what the governance role was all about, in terms of that critical friend, holding the leadership to account, creating better lives for children, just by asking those questions. And those were really easy to me because, like I said, I was from a non-education background. I then was subsequently asked to be the chair the following year. And again, that sounds scary, but actually what the chair is doing exactly the same, but just making sure that there's a bit of structure to the meeting, the minutes get looked after, you're following process. And actually there'll be other governors in the room who were maybe a bit quieter, but had knowledge and skills to bring, and you call them out, and you almost become a family, because you're trying to do this all for the right reasons and trying to create better lives for children and making sure the education system is delivering and the school is delivering in a combined way. And so that worked really well for a year. And then I was asked to join it was a multi-academy trust. So I became a trustee. So I had to move from a governor role to a trustee role. And it was almost that going from operational supporting the school to going to trying to help and support multiple schools, which, if I'm honest, was hard too. So again, I know a bit more about education, so I couldn't really call myself a non-education individual by that time. But even then, it's a very different role. But it's a voluntary role. The team know that, but I was bringing some skills from my corporate life to that, and I was adding value. And again, I was asking the same questions, but at a strategic level, what does this mean for all of the schools combined together? And I had the governance bug. And you will all get that once you start having those conversations and you start to get engaged and you feel part of the community that gets involved. And that's where GLF then asked me to join them again as a governor, and then I became a trustee. But it's just an incredibly rewarding and vital role. And then I guess what that made me think, and I think for many of you on this call, I'm going to assume that many of you may not have an education background, but you come from different walks of life. Don't assume that you have to be in a corporate environment, or don't assume you have to be from a certain background or a certain role or a certain function, because whatever your working life and experience is, you will bring something to the table. Because originally I was surrounded by teachers or individuals who've been governors for many years or from other schools, and it really, really does add that balance. And before you know it, you'll just be part of the furniture. I was thinking about some of the words Claire was talking through, and I was reliving my initial experience. So the words like strategic and board level and financial management and holding senior leaders to account, policy development. Again, many of those sounded scary originally before I joined, but actually once you get into it, it's BAU activity. It's just actually once you go through your onboarding and you understand and you start talking. Well, strategic in my world meant, how quickly do we grow the multi-academy trust? We're currently at 2 schools. How quickly can we grow to 5? What are the pros and cons? The board level, well, it meant we're celebrating successes. We're looking after well-being. We're recognizing progress. We're looking at the trust as a whole. And if I think about the word financial management, although I come from a financial background because I work in financial services, it doesn't necessarily mean that I read profit and loss statements all the time. But what I was looking at was, is the school financially sustaining itself? And I was able to challenge where certain money was being spent and why it was being spent, to make sure that the answers I got back felt palatable and were the interests of the kids, the school, and the well-being of the teachers and the support staff. And actually, they're going to progress well together to get good results. And the final one was the holding senior leaders to account. I delved into that further and further, and actually, it's that critical friend. I've got their back, but it doesn't mean that I can't ask them the questions as to why something means something, why something hasn't delivered, etc., etc. I think the other one was policy development. I've rarely created policies. However, I've been part of them. I've looked at them. I've read them. But I almost sort of think, well, some of the things I was looking at was, I bring up the policy document. Does it feel fair? And I always remember the sickness and absence one as an example. Well, was it clear? Was it fair? Did the processes look good? Yes or no? And yes, they did. And I was asking for a couple of questions and made a couple of tweaks to it. And actually, it was a better version of the policy because we were all providing our views and aspects to it. What have I got from being a trustee and a governor? Well, I've definitely taken some of this into my professional life. I think I hold better meetings with teams. I think I contribute in committees a lot more because I've got that experience from being both a governor and a trustee. I definitely think I've played my part, and I'm comfortable that the school and the trust is doing right by the kids, doing right by the staff that are there, and hopefully it will create better futures. Um, that's just a lot of stuff there. Hopefully some of that has been useful and it's bringing to life what the role involves, but happy to delve into any questions.
There is one question in the Q&A chat, Dito.
Yes.
Are you able to see it, or would you like me to read it out?
Absolutely. So the question is, what is the gender breakdown on your governing board and governors board in the UK as a whole? Well, I can only talk about if I start when I was a local school governor, I would say it was 40% male, 60% female in terms of the balance. If I talk about the trust that I'm part of, there are 2 males and 6 females, and it was 5 and 3 before. So yes, a balance. But again, you go for the skills that are missing. So the more, after my first year, I understood the value of a skills audit, and you'll hear this if you go into governance. We were looking at the balance of skills, but naturally we were fortunate in terms of the gender balance, but also we have an ethnicity balance. And one of our schools is in a very, I would say 80% of the individuals come from ethnic minorities versus another school that is far more balanced. So it's important to have that balance where you can. Let me have a look at some of the other questions. Is there a support network of other governors, people that you can turn to ask questions? I guess that's one for you, Claire, or the team. I mean, in my case, I would talk to other governors. So I had a WhatsApp group with the other governors that were on there, and we excluded intentionally the teachers and the teaching staff so we could have a chat and we could ask each other the questions in a safe environment. And I know there are various Facebook groups and there are various internal forums that you can access that I've accessed in the past.
Thanks, Dito. Yes, Rosie, so we don't have a support network as such as other governors here at Governors for Schools, but we are here to support you and answer any questions that you do have. So we are there throughout every step in the process, and also post-placement as well. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. There is another question here. So I have an interview this week to become a governor. Do you have any advice to prepare and for the interview itself? So I would just say, Abby, to be able to prepare for the interview. So obviously I would take a look at the school website, have a read through their Ofsted report, and maybe just go into the interview with any questions that you want to ask. So any questions that you want to ask for yourself. We do actually have a school visit brochure at Governors for Schools that we would be able to send to you after this. Quite useful. It gives you some key questions that you may be asked, and also some key questions that you might like to highlight as well in your interview. So we can send that to you. Sitar, I don't know if you had any advice.
Yeah, so one of the questions I would ask back to the school is, what are you looking for within a governor? What's missing? What do you need? What does good look like? So again, you can question them, because this is as much about it being right for you and vice versa. But what you'll find is when you ask that question, you will get an honest response back, and you'll find that there's probably elements of it that you can absolutely support with, and have some things in your armory to what could you bring from both your working life or your professional life, and if you've not worked or you don't have a profession, what do you think you will be able to do to be able to ask questions, and how do you just imagine how you talk with friends at the moment and those who confide in you, and how you support others? That's almost what you have to do at a slightly different level and a school level. But I would certainly go and use the resources that Claire talked about and just have a chat, because often interviews make it sound more formal than it is. It does turn up to be a chat, and can you see yourself being able to add value? And I suspect you probably will be able to.
Definitely. Thank you, Sito. So another question, how often do schools look for new governors? Is there any time of year when most schools are looking to engage in new governors? So as mentioned, we get vacancies registered through our Governors for Schools portal all the time, every day. So we've got thousands of vacancies registered. Schools are always looking for new governors to join their governing boards. There may be certain times of the year where we may get more vacancies registered than others, maybe sometimes before like a full governing board meeting. So in the September, the March, etc., as they happen 4 times per term, sorry. Oh, the question's gone. And I forgot what the last bit was. Let me look at the answered ones. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we have vacancies registered all the time. Schools are always looking for new school governors, and people are always stepping down from school governing boards as well. So you can't really say there's a best time to apply, really.
I'll jump in because I can see a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to take on a governor's role if your family moves frequently? I guess it might tie in with your slide before. The GLF trustee role is virtual. So actually, I'm based in London, but the schools are based in the southwest. So there will be, I suspect, some roles where virtual is possible. I still go and see the school once throughout the academic year, but I've seen those options are available. The next one I was going to help with was, I've also got a question about, I've already started but not had an induction. Should I have one? So when I first started for my governor role, I didn't have an induction. Actually, they didn't have an induction pack per se. They cobbled one together. There's a lot better material and support now to be able to create one. But I would say have a chat with the governance professional or one of the teaching teams to say, look, okay, just let's talk through the onboarding pack and information I need to know, because the chances are if they don't have a robust one, well, that's great because you can bring that to the party and say, we absolutely, number 1 item on the agenda, let's have a proper induction program, and you can help to build one. But don't be surprised if they have the information, but they've just not had the opportunity to share it. So I would absolutely be open and ask for one. And like I said, if they don't, that's what you're already bringing to the table, because there should be a proper induction and onboarding process.
Yes, definitely. I totally agree. And also, Malika, just to expand on that, not quite the same as an induction, but governors for schools do offer quite an extensive training and resources. So it's free of charge on our website, so you can access our induction e-learning modules. And also, if you do come through Governors for Schools and then you're placed, we do offer 12 months free access to Governor Hub knowledge, which is also quite useful.
Can I just absolutely back that up, right? It's useful because what it allows you to do is, if you think back to when I first started talking, all of these terms and the words used were all new to me. But actually, had I done elements of that in advance, I'd be walking in feeling a little bit knowledgeable than I was. Hindsight's a lovely thing, because I'd rather have walked in a little bit knowledgeable, because then I'm not asking questions for the first time. What I'm doing is cementing some of my knowledge. So I would absolutely recommend having a look at some of that material if time allows you to do so.
Thanks, Seetal. So we do have another question just regarding can you become a school governor if you do not reside in the UK? I have had colleagues at Governors for Schools have had an experience of someone who does live abroad, but they travel to the UK often for work, so they're still able to govern in that school. And I think it's quite a unique scenario, and it depends on the full details of your situation. Seetal, have you seen many circumstances of that?
No, I'm racking my brains. No, I don't. I haven't. What we did have was one individual who was a trustee, but their work gave them a lovely opportunity to move to New York, and they did do the first 2 meetings from New York. Their only issue morning, and after the second meeting they attended, as you can imagine, it just wasn't something that they wanted to do, but they couldn't commit because the time zone didn't allow. But because it was virtual, and we knew the individual, it made it work. But beyond that circumstance, I haven't seen any others.
Yeah, I do think it's a very unique situation, and I guess also can depend largely on the school as well, how open they are to something like that. But yeah, after we've got through these questions, there's a few more slides and I'll provide my email address. So if you did have any further questions on that, then please feel free to email me and I'll be happy to assist you with that. Right. So Sandra said it's important to ask about details of time commitment before you proceed. And I think that's in relation to the question on what do you have any helpful interview tips? So yeah, absolutely. It is very important to ask about the time commitment before you proceed, because the time commitment is different for each school. So it depends, it varies. So yeah, that is very important. Thank you, Sandra. Is the typical process for applying to submit an online application and then one interview in a school, or are there other processes involved? Applying. Is the typical process for applying to submit an application? Okay, so the process at Governors for Schools, Rosie, which I will explain in further details on some more slides. We've just got loads of questions right now, which is great. You would submit an application and then you would be given a dedicated team member, depending on what region you live in. And then what will happen is we will go through a personalised matching service where we will match up, we'll find you an opportunity based on your skill set and your locality. So as previously mentioned, we'll try to find you an opportunity that is close to your home address or work address, whichever you prefer, as possible. So it's within easy travel distance, and then it will be based on what skills the school is looking for and whether your skills match up to that vacancy. What will then happen is we'll send your application across to that school. If the school are interested in your application, we will then send that opportunity to you. So further details of the opportunity, so the school, the Ofsted report, the school website, and then what will happen is we will introduce you to a contact at that school. So it could be the clerk, it could be the chair of governors, it could just be a governor on that school governing board. In some instances, it may be the head teacher. And from there, you will have just an informal chat, and that will kind of be, you'll ask them some general questions and vice versa. And then if you're both still happy to proceed, you'll then likely be invited to the school and you'll have a tour of the school, you'll meet the head teacher and the chair of governors. And then from there, you may have, it's different for different schools, you may have a more formal interview process. And then you may observe a few meetings before you're actually appointed onto the board. And then eventually you will be, there'll be a governing board vote at a full governing board meeting where you'll be voted into the board, essentially. That's kind of the rough process, but it does differ from school to school. Seetold, do you tend to agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll find, I think, the bigger trusts and the bigger schools will have a more formalised process, and the smaller schools are the ones that might not have the full-time governance professionals, so on and so forth. They'll have a slightly more sort of, I hate the word friendlier process, but I don't mean that, a less structured process. Spot on, totally agree.
Brilliant. So I've just submitted my application. What happens next? So thank you so much for submitting your application, Laura. That's great. What will happen next is your application will be read through by one of our dedicated team members, and then it will be validated. Once it has been validated, that just means that your application, we're now going to start looking for opportunities for you. And once that does happen, you'll receive an email to say it's been validated and we're now going to start looking for opportunities. And the process is the same as what I've just outlined above. Essentially, we will go through our matching process. When we initially send you an opportunity, there's no pressure to accept the first opportunity we send. If it doesn't quite fit your criteria, then that's fine. You can just say, I would like you to continue looking and we'll search for some more opportunities for you. I hope I didn't go into too much detail because I did in the previous question. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, so next question. Hi, I have been invited directly by schools to become a co-opted governor, so would not be applying through the Governors for Schools process. Would it still be possible to access the support resources mentioned? So yes, of course, you can definitely access them, Tom. The only thing you would have to do, you would have to create an online profile. So you'd go onto our website, create a login, and from there you would then be able to access all of our training and resources. We do have an introduction to governance whole module, and I think that's £23. And then we also have the option for monthly webinars that you can attend and you can rewatch back, and also other e-learning modules that are free of charge. So yeah, you can absolutely access them, and we would encourage you to also. Next question. As a governor responsible for inductions, I make sure potential recruits have information and a school visit prior to interview. Yes, that's great, Sandra. Thank you for that. That's great that you do that, and we hope that all schools do that, but may not necessarily be the case.
No, and I would say that's the best bit, the time that you will spend in the school. So of course you'll have your meetings and you'll talk about things, and you'll have a good conversation, and you'll be that critical friend, and you'll hold individuals to account, and you'll come up with ideas and suggestions, and you'll see the school grow and flourish. However, the time that you then spend in the school, whether it's just walking around, just understanding, seeing things in practice, watching the teachers teach children in action, being able to just ask a few questions, even if you have to do the single central record check, it doesn't matter what part of the process, but the best bit that certainly for me, and what makes me carry on wanting to do this, is the bit when you're in school and you can see that difference. It's brilliant, that bit of it. And I know that's not always possible if you're doing it virtual, but I would always say, if you're new to this, definitely try and do that visit, and definitely make sure you spend a little bit of time watching the teachers in action, watching the children thrive, and even some of the time with the support staff in the background.
Thank you, Sital. So we have one more question on here then. I don't think we've missed any. So what's the link in school function on the website? Despite not understanding it, I've been merrily linking schools. I believe, Laura, I think you may potentially be talking about our dashboard, and I'm just wondering whether you're, if you're coming from a school's perspective, because if you are, then it would mean that every school that can register a vacancy, they can kind of then link to different schools. Or if you're part of a trust, when you're registering a vacancy, you can obviously link to different academy schools within that trust. If you're coming from a volunteer perspective, it may be that you're on your application form, you can say what your preferences are, and maybe you're linking your preferred school to your application. But I'm not 100% sure. So again, I'm going to put my email up at the end of the presentation. So please just do feel free to email me, and I can help you with that. Right. I think that's it for questions. Did anybody else have any other questions? Okay, yeah, Laura, okay, you're coming from a governor perspective. I think it may then be that you're linking your preferred school potentially, but yeah, please do email me and we can sort it out. It's not a problem. Okay, right, I think that's it for questions. I do have a few more slides to go through, just about our training and resources and next steps. And as I'm going through them, again, if any other questions come up, please do pop them in the chat and we will do our best to answer them. Okay, so just to move on to training and support. So at Governors for Schools, we do more than just place you in a school. We want you to be effective in your governor role as quickly as possible. Therefore, we have a free range of e-learning modules on a number of topics to introduce you to the key elements of the role. We also hold regular webinars so you can continue your learning and have the opportunity to ask our governance experts questions. Once you have been placed at a school, you will also be given 12 months free access to the online Governor Resource and Knowledge Bank from Governor Hub Knowledge, formerly known as The Key, which it really is such a wonderful tool. Also, in England and Wales, all new governors are able to access free training opportunities through their local authority or multi-academy trust, which will be organised through the school. So next steps then. Next is over to you. I would really encourage you to visit our website to complete your online profile with your skills and experience, school and travel preferences, and a personal statement that demonstrates your passion and commitment to improving educational standards through governance. And as I previously explained, we will then share this with schools during the process of finding you a suitable governor role. Once you've submitted your application, you'll be assigned a dedicated partnerships team member, and as opportunities arise, your key contact within the partnerships team will share them with you to discuss suitability. As mentioned previously, each school has a slightly different recruitment process, so once both you and the school are happy to move forward, we'll make the introductions between you to discuss next steps. This can involve an initial chat about the role in the school, a meeting with the head teacher or the chair, a visit to the school to have a look around, observing a meeting or an interview. We are there to track your progress through the process, offering support where you need it up until you hear the news that you have been appointed. We are, of course, on hand post-placement for any further support that's needed. I just wanted to mention as well before, I was going to do the Q&A here, but we've done the Q&A after Seatel spoke, which is great. I just wanted to encourage you to all sign up to our first webinar of our upcoming inclusion campaign, which is due to take place on the 9th of October at 12 p.m. A link to this will be posted in the chat, I believe, so that you can access that. So yeah, it will be our first webinar of our upcoming inclusion campaign. So I'd really encourage you all to sign up to that. And there is my email address. If anyone has any further questions, any questions about the application process or whatever else, and I'll be very happy to answer any further questions. But it doesn't look like we've had any more questions coming in. So I just wanted everyone to thank everyone for giving up their evening today to attend this session. I do hope that it was helpful, and I hope that we answered your questions as well. And I wanted to say a massive thank you for Seatel for being here. It's amazing to hear about your journey through governance and how quickly that you've progressed as well. It's great for people to be able to hear about that, and it's very useful. So thank you.
No, my pleasure. I would say to everybody who's listening, absolutely take that leap of faith, right? If you're worried or you're sitting on the fence, you've got a wonderful resource, but just take that leap of faith because you absolutely won't regret it, and you will enjoy it, you will benefit from it, and just do it.